2002, 2003, I started thinking about negative space as opposed to positive space. So I took a photo of this giant oak tree in Central Park, and in Photoshop, I increased the contrast, made it black and white. And then I put a grid on it, and I would make these little books. In fact, one of them is going to be in a show, as it happens, that Barbara Young is curating. The books were accordion books, and each page had a section of the grid of this tree. And it was a horizontal line across the photograph. So what my thought was that each book piled on each other on shelves would create the whole tree. But the books had so many pages that it just took me forever. But I really started thinking about negative space as being more important than the positive space, or switching the importance. And I started taking these photographs and little sections of them and transferring them to book pages and then burning out the negative space. So I did a whole series like that. That's on my website also. I did, I don't know, maybe 25 or 30 of these book pages from Freud's interpretation of dreams. And then I thought, well, instead of burning, maybe I could cut the negative space out. And that's when I started cutting paper. At some point, I got this software that made these patterns, these Islamic patterns. And I thought, I'm going to try making these Islamic patterns on paper and cutting them out and then layering them and kind of seeing how they work together. So I did that for a little while. That wasn't that interesting, even though, I mean, they were kind of interesting. I still have some, but one day I'm sitting at breakfast and looking at this pile of New York Times, because I got the New York Times no matter where I lived. At this point, I was in Brooklyn, and I thought, well, what if I cut the front page of the paper with these patterns? Because at that time, it was the beginning of the Arab Spring. So this would have been 2010. And I thought the Islamic patterns were kind of indicative of, you know, something good that was happening in the Middle East for a change. Of course, that changed, but at the beginning, I did a whole bunch of them with photographs from the Arab Spring. And then things really changed for the worse in the Middle East. We started to see all these Syrian migrants. And as a mother and a grandmother, my heart just, you know, went out to these people. And so I started doing a whole series with photos from the Syrian migrants. And that became a series called the Migrant Series that ultimately was shown in New York. So I was still thinking about the negative space, and I was still thinking about how the cutting away reveals, and well, two things. It destroys the page, but it creates something else. So it's a deconstruct and construct at the same time. And also how I can keep enough content on the page so the viewer would get a sense of what's there, but much of it is cut away. And it seemed to me that that was a reflection of the fact that most people don't really read the whole story anyway. They just kind of see stories in bits and pieces. So that was the whole train of thought there.